Hey everyone, my name is Bence and I'm the social media manager at Crytek, and today we are here with Loic, the live service producer for Showdown, and we will be talking about our brand new matchmaking changes that we have introduced in update 1.5.1. Hey Loic, how are you doing today?
Hey Bence, I'm good, and you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. So, as I mentioned earlier, we have just released a big update with a bunch of brand new matchmaking changes. We actually released a blog talking about it on the Showdown website and also in the patch notes on Steam. So make sure to read all of that, guys. But now, Loic, could you recap for us what we actually changed?
Yeah, so basically with 1.5.1, what we did was to implement an option to enforce that players can choose if they want to use the skill-based matchmaking or if they want to opt out and be matched against any other players. We also have additional change to that update. One will help with basically having better ratio between the different groups. So it's like, for example, how we can differentiate a solo player versus a random team of 2 or a team of 3. So that players can be, like the groups can be matched with a bit more granularity. And then we also implemented a PvP rating decay to ease the players basically returning to hunt if they didn't play for a while. We will take it a bit more easy on them for the first few games so that they can get used to the game again.
Guys, again, please check our detailed explanation on our website at huntshowdown.com, as well as on the patch notes on Steam. But as these changes are pretty big and they change the core mechanics in Showdown, at least matchmaking-wise, and how you are matched against other players in your game, we also received a lot of questions that players had, and they didn't really understand how a few things work. So let's just dive into those questions and let's answer as much as we can. The first question we had very frequently is how the PvP rating that we currently have in the game is calculated.
Yeah, so PvP rating is basically your score against other players. We use a ELO-like system, a system that is used in chess to attempt to predict the outcome of a fight 1 versus 1 between 2 players. So yeah, all the players have their own scores and get basically updated every time you kill or get killed. In case you kill someone, then some points are added to your score, and in case you get killed, some points are removed. The amount of points that get added or removed depends on the PvP rating of your opponent. So for example, if you are a low PvP ratings and you manage to kill a high PvP ratings, then you will get a big increase because you overcame the odds of this fight. But in case you have a high PvP ratings and you kill a low PvP ratings, then both you and your opponent's score will almost not change because it was the expected outcome of this fight.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. And since we have another measurement in the game called KDA, which is somewhat similar, could you tell us what's the difference and why is KD not calculated into the PvP rating?
Yeah, so KDA is basically we don't really use it into the PvP rating calculation because it doesn't really take the opponent's skill into account. So let's say, for example, you are new to the game and you kill 5 players. The KDA that if you would kill 5 new starters who had like 0 experience in the game, or if you have a KDA because you killed 5 very experienced players, would be very different interpretation of this KDA. And that's why we still use somewhat like kill and death into the PvP ratings, but KDA is not a direct measurement of skill.
So what is the point of having a KD in the game, and why do we have that separately then?
Yeah, so I mean, KDA is still a good interpretation. It's very clear for players, right? It's like it's just the amount of kills, the amount of assists you do versus the times you were killed. So it's still a very good bragging right, and also a good indication of teamwork. And that's why we think it's a good opportunity to have this as a visible parameters. But PvP rating, we basically use it only for the matchmaking to provide as fair games as possible.
Sounds good. And since we have this system in place for the game and the players evolve or change, obviously, the more they play the game, is there a way for them to reset the KDs or the matchmaking rate them at all, or is it ever going to happen?
No, at the moment we don't have these options to reset any of those values. In terms of the PvP ratings, we may actually reset the PvP ratings in case we do any major tweaks or change to the calculation of it. That's where we will then reset it for everyone at the same time.
This sounds good. And since with this update, we changed how the matchmaking system works, and a lot of people have been asking us, like, how is a group PvP rating calculated right now?
So for a group calculation, we basically take so initially in the past, we were actually taking the maximum PvP rating of any member of the group. We changed it in April last year to be the average of the PvP ratings of all the members of the group. But with 151, we basically introduce an additional layer of this, and we make sure that we have a ratio that represents the relative strength of a group versus another group. Like, for example, if it's a solo player, if he is fighting two other players that are also of the same PvP skills than him, he will still have a tougher time. And that's why we have this additional ratio that we introduced with 151 to balance this out and make sure that a solo may still have a fair chance against two other players in a duo team.
So as you talked about solos versus teams, could you explain in a bit more detail how exactly solo versus duo versus trio is calculated and how they are matched against each other in a game?
So for the matchmaking, basically, so first players can opt out from, like, solo or duo can opt out from playing against trio. In case they would not opt out and they would then accept to play against trios, then what we do is that, when the group is formed, we basically take the average PvP ratings of all the group members. We multiply it by this ratio that is a relative strength of the group, and we use this value to place this group into a specific matchmaking brackets. And then all groups that will be within this bracket will then be matched against each other.
You mentioned the brackets, new PvP brackets. Could you explain how these brackets are put together and how they work in the system of the game?
A PvP bracket is basically a bucket of arbitrary PvP range. So we can have a PvP, like a bracket that is like from this to there and another from there to there. And basically player that will be within those fence will be matched together.
And obviously, since we have 12 players in the game, how are these put together in a match? Like, are all the players in the same bracket, or could they be in different brackets, or does that depend on the brand new option where you can select skill-based matchmaking or normal matchmaking, or how is that exactly working right now?
With this new option that we introduced with 151, if you select the skill-based matchmaking in the lobby options, then you will only match players within your own bracket or that are from lower brackets that would have accepted to not use the skill-based matchmaking. They would have accepted to fight anyone. What we consider a fair match is basically that everyone that selected the skill-based matchmaking will play within their own bracket, and players that would have opted out from the skill-based matchmaking from lower bracket may also join that game because they will be of lesser skill, but they just accept this situation. If you did not select the skill-based matchmaking, then you will be matched against players from any brackets. There will be no guarantee that the match might be fair. And it is important, though, to know that we take the average of the PvP rating of a group. But the individual member may have actually widely different PvP ratings. So it could be that within one group, you have actually members that are maybe from different PvP brackets. But as players can invite each other, it's extremely difficult for us to predict this. So that's why we make a calculation using the average and then using the strengths of the group. And we will continue to monitor as well to make sure that the matchmaking is as fair as it can be.
Some people have asked, like, what happens if you do really well in one single game? Let's say you kill 7 hunters alone, or what if you just die to a player that's way worse than you? Is it possible to fall down or rise up a whole bracket within one game?
Yeah, it's completely possible, especially in a region with high population, like Europe, for example, or in the US, because we have the bracket definition is then more granular. It's a smaller increment between each brackets, but it should not cause any problem for you to jump brackets. It's just because your PvP ratings then would have changed, and it means that the system would evaluate that you can play against the opponents of that bracket.
Sounds good. And since we mentioned falling down brackets, we have also introduced a new feature, which is ELO decay. Could you tell us how that exactly works, or what does that entail in this update?
Yeah, so basically with the ELO, the PvP rating decay, in case someone comes back to Hunt after not playing for a while, what we do is that for the next few games, we will have a multiplier on top of his current PvP ratings. And after a few games, this one will be lifted because he should have readjusted to the current skills of the player. So what it will entail, everything will be done under the hood. But when you come back, ideally the match will be a tiny bit easier for you to get used to the game again. And after a few games, then your PvP rating should have adjusted, and we then lift these kind of little wheels.
Sounds good. That's a really nice new feature, especially for those that haven't played the game in a while. You should definitely play now with the new matchmaking system. Talking about all these changes, what can we expect from the speed of the matchmaking? Is it gonna be much slower or actually quicker, or what can the players expect in this update for the matchmaking speed?
Yeah, with the new matchmaking, as we are providing more options, usually when you provide more options, it increases a bit the time. So we expect that it might increase a bit. We will also introduce likely more PvP brackets, but we are monitoring the matchmaking times, and we will make change if needed to make sure that it doesn't increase more than 10 to 15% more.
And now we kind of went over all the questions related to the matchmaking and how it works exactly. But let's go through a few questions that ask for future possibilities. And first of that is a ranked system. Is that we ever want to do?
So currently we don't have any plans for a rank system. In the future it might happen, but at the moment we don't have this on the roadmap.
Another big question that comes up very often is region locking servers or regions, so they can't play in another region. Obviously, right now you can just select your server from the menu and basically you can play in any region. Do we have any plans to ever limit that or change that?
Yeah, so it has been discussed internally, but there are some implications that we would need to clarify before we are able to implement this. For example, also, how do we deal with players who would have already purchased the game and would not have a latency that allow them to fit on any regions? So it is something that we consider, but it's not such an easy feature to implement right away.
Thank you for that answer. I'm sure a lot of people were very interested in that. And the last question that came up quite often is the possibility for a mentoring system, like a few other games have it. So as we know, Hunt Showdown is a very hard game to learn, especially if you are a new player. It takes a lot of experience, and to just learn all the game mechanics and the basics is taking a long time. So are we ever going to add an option where all our veteran players could help out the newcomers in an introductory way for a mentoring system?
Yeah, we discussed it already. We don't have it currently on the roadmap. Yeah, it's an interesting feature, especially to leverage the experience of the community to help onboarding new players. But the feature still requires quite a lot of effort to be implemented in a correct way. We need to make sure that, for example, the mentor that we assign to new players are actually helping them and not making their experience even worse or more problematic. And therefore, it's not straightforward, and we currently would prefer to focus on to put our effort into other feature improvement or optimization.
Awesome, Loic. Thank you for all the answers. Guys, if you have any more questions, make sure to reach out to us on social media or leave the questions down in the comments below. And obviously, we will look into it and try to get back to you as soon as we can. Make sure to read our blog post and our patch notes regarding this update and all the matchmaking changes. And you can also take a look at our PvP rating blog that we have released when we initially added a matchmaking system into the game, and that explained how the PvP rating works, so make sure to give a read to that as well. Thank you, Loic, for joining us today and answering all these questions. And hope to see you everyone in the bayou. Thank you, guys, and bye-bye.
Thank you, ciao.